once again, we ask for your patience as we work toward a better worship experience for people both in the sanctuary and online. Welcome to Northwest, a Unitarian Universalist congregation. I am Diana Kohler. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the worship associate for this morning's service. Pastor Joshua Berg will deliver the sermon. Our hymns will be led by the Northwest Singers under the direction of Ken Hermanot. Congregants in the sanctuary can sing while masked. Alex Myers is running the AV tech and playing the piano this morning. Please greet your neighbors with a wave from wherever you are. We have the folks on Zoom up on gallery view and we see them. And now, if in the congregation you would turn towards that camera, they will be able to see you waving at each other. And then if you haven't greeted each other inside the sanctuary, say hello to everybody here. Good morning, all. Here in this place and with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice we light our way. Each month, Northwest shares 50% of the plate collections with a local 501c3 organization. Our recipient for August is the Michigan Education Justice Coalition. They are fighting to protect public schools and advocating for increased school funding, decolonized and culturally appropriate curriculums, student voice in leadership, and school budgets that reflect community values. You can text to give to 248-574-8034 with your amount plus the word plate. You can donate online, choose the plate collection 50% split, and if you are here in person, checks and cash can be placed in the collection basket in the front of the sanctuary.
Hello, my name is Rochelle with the Michigan Education Justice Coalition, or the MAJC. The MAJC is an organization dedicated to advocating for quality education in the state of Michigan. We advocate for equitably and fully funded schools that approach education and learning in a healthy and healing way. We use our funding and donations to continue to listen to parents' and students' needs through listening sessions. Last year alone, we held over 60 listening sessions. We also work with community members to communicate those needs to the decision makers at state and local levels. The MEJC holds school board candidate forums so that two-way discussions on issues and needs happen with the community and the people running to become members of local school boards. And finally, we work with partner organizations on Get Out the Vote, because although advocacy does not end at the ballot box, it can begin there. For more information on how you can become involved with the Michigan Education Justice Coalition, you can find us on the web at miajustice.org.
Please rise and body your spirit to sing The Wind of Change Forever Blown, number 183, in Singing the Living Tradition. Please join in singing.
Lord,
Our reading is an excerpt from Forgetting Reinhold Niebuhr by Arthur Schlesinger Jr. in the New York Times in 2005. Niebuhr was born in Missouri in 1892, the son of a German-born minister of the German Evangelical Synod of North America. He was trained for the minister at the Synod's Eden Theological Seminary and at the Yale Divinity School. In the 20s, he took a church in industrial Detroit, the scene of bitter labor capital conflict. Niebuhr's sympathies lay with the unions, and he joined Norman Thomas's Socialist Party. Meanwhile, New York's Union Theological Seminary, impressed by the power of his preaching and his writing, recruited him for its faculty in 1928. There he remained for the rest of his life. He died in 1971. Why, in an age of religiosity, has Niebuhr, the supreme American theologian of the 20th century, dropped out of the 21st century religious discourse? Maybe issues have taken more urgent form since his death: terrorism, torture, abortion, same-sex marriage, Genesis versus Darwin, embryonic stem cells research. But maybe he has fallen out of fashion because 9/11 has revived the myth of our national innocence. Lamentations about the end of innocence became favorite cliches at the time. Niebuhr was a critic of national innocence, which he regarded as a delusion. After all, whites coming to these shores were reared in the Calvinist doctrine of sinful humanity, and they killed red people, enslaved black people, and later imported yellow men for peon labor. Not much of a background for national innocence. Nations as individuals who are completely innocent in their own esteem, he wrote, are insufferable in their human context. The self-righteous delusion of innocence encouraged a kind of Manichaeism, dividing the world between good, us, and evil, our critics. Niebuhr emphasized the mixed and ambivalent character of human nature. Creative impulses matched by destructive impulses, regard for others overruled by excessive self-regard, the will to power, the individual under constant temptation to play God to history. This is what is known in the ancient vocabulary of Christianity as the doctrine of original sin. He summed up his political argument in a single powerful sentence: man's capacity for justice makes democracy possible, but man's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary. In the fashion of the day, he used man not to exculpate women, but as shorthand for human being. And now Josh will provide our sermon.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. It's wonderful to be back here at Northwest. I feel like I'm back because I was just a week away and traveling, and I really have been here the whole time with you, and I will continue to be. Thank you all for your presence. Thank you all for helping put this worship service together. Today is the second in my talk in my series. Last time I spoke last month was the first, obviously. It's a series on Reinhold Niebuhr's Serenity Prayer, focusing on the second phrase of that prayer. And for those who don't know it, it's used in many 12-step programs, but it begins, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And then the second phrase asks for the courage to change the things we can. Now, Reinhold Niebuhr's original version, that was a little different from what people know as the 12-step Serenity Prayer. In fact, we're not sure what he wrote Exactly. But according to his daughter, who helped him with his archives and his papers and his letters, her name was Elizabeth Sifton, Niebuhr actually wrote these words. He wrote, God give us grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things that should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. I'll talk a little, because it's a UU congregation, I'll talk a little bit more about the G word, God, later. But Niebuhr, what he was doing was he was petitioning for courage to change the things, not that can be changed, as it's often said, but that should be changed. Like what Diana mentioned, for instance, in the beginning, that we are not innocent. We need to change and recognize our culpability and accountability as a country. And so things can be changed for the better, or they can be changed for the worse. So the discernment lies in deciding what changes should be made. Now, a change can be obviously momentary and terminal, very quick. But what I want to focus on today is change, broadly speaking. Positive, transformative change is progressive, requiring ongoing effort and struggle, and thus courage to change the things we should. And this is the courage to navigate power and love, in line with what Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said. His wisdom was that power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. So this is the courage to navigate change between power and love. Power and love, one is always needed to balance the other in order to support ongoing transformative, positive change. And that takes courage. The author Brené Brown's research showed that all change also includes vulnerability. In other words, letting go of safety. So to have that courage, we need to change what we should, what we must. Vulnerability is also a key element, or as Brown names it, and I love this, she calls vulnerability loving wholeheartedly, even if it hurts. And in Western society, often vulnerability is equated with a weakness or with a gullibility or a fragility. And rather, according to Brown, vulnerability is courage. Brown confirms, she wrote that 11,000 pieces of her data, she's a researcher too, 11,000 pieces of her data, she couldn't find a single example of courage or moral courage, spiritual courage, leadership courage, relational courage that was not born completely of vulnerability. You see, it's actually when we lose vulnerability that we become too fragile, as many in the white and privileged class have become. Fragility, it leads to a host of things that we must let go of in order to love wholeheartedly. Brown lists, Brown lists things like perfectionism, powerlessness, scarcity mentality, comparison, and more as things that we need to let go of in order to love wholeheartedly. And crucially, if we're not vulnerable enough to experience and overcome adversity, we gradually also lose the ability to find hope that we even can overcome. Brown writes, quote, "We have to take down everything we put up that was supposed to be keeping us safe. Allowing vulnerability takes courage, but it liberates the spirit." Now, my mind personally is often so entrenched in what I believe to be the truth, so afraid to lose any aspect of myself, that I cling personally too desperately to what I think I know is part and parcel to my individual identity alone. And this closed-minded desire of mine to resist inevitable change, it has often stunted my personal growth. Only when I give up the safety and that conviction to be right, only then do I progress. Only then can I sit in that serenity that is the space between breaths that I talked about in my last sermon, necessary to liberate my spirit enough to accept and even welcome even welcome the things I cannot change in order to change the things I should. Now, especially as a minister myself, I often find myself at a crossroads. In fact, I rarely don't find myself at a crossroads. Today, for instance, I'm worshiping, virtually at least, but in what many of you call a church. Many call a congregation, many call a church. Growing up Jewish, even using that word church causes me quite a bit of tsuris. That's the Yiddish for agita or trouble. I don't believe in creationism, yet my dearly beloved brother, who I respect for his intelligence and discernment, he's an Orthodox Jew. Who does? I don't say the word God necessarily when referring to my own theology, because I'm still searching for meaning in that for me. Yet in you worship, we sometimes use that. In fact, I have used it within the context of worship today. I use other sacred words as well, deriving from those words and ascribing to those words new meanings, translating them so they're meaningful for me. And as a chaplain, another crossroads is that I must use sacred language without judgment in order to facilitate healing for others for whom those words and that sacred language has a very strong meaning. So at all of these crossroads, I find myself, in the words of a Dr. Gregory Carroll Boyd, who is another minister here in LA, I'm presented with a choice of path. Do I choose a path I know is comfortable, or do I choose a path I believe is right, that opens my spirit to growth, regardless of my own discomfort? Discomfort means I'm learning. It means I'm growing. And since discomfort requires vulnerability, it opens the way for necessary change. Now, let me say discomfort, however, doesn't mean I have to, for instance, ever say the word God with respect to my own humanistic philosophy. Maybe I won't. But if I remain intransigent as far as understanding, as far as validating and respecting the use of the word by others, then I risk not only misunderstanding, but causing pain. I risk alienating much of the world and thus preventing change, because we are not alone in the struggle, and therefore true transformative change can only happen in relationship, in community. As a humanist, I must acknowledge the collective human spirit. As Bell Hooks says, and love opens our hearts to the collective human need. This spirit representative of meaning that can be found in the world, in our connection to the earth, in doing good by giving of ourselves. This is the collective human spirit. In fact, we'll conclude this worship today, later, with a chalice extinguishing that is a prayer of thanks that compares change to the winds, and hope to fire, and love to oceans, and earth to good. That's connecting us. The intention of the prayer is connecting us to lift up this connection of our human struggle to the world and to all life upon it, to the interconnected spirit of life. So I don't have to necessarily change my own beliefs. But if I don't work to understand, or at the very least respect connections that others make, and my interconnection with others, I put up impenetrable walls. I shut down conversation, and I become the dogmatic fundamentalists who I condemn. So with respect and deference to so many who I love and admire, and in the interest of the success of our movement toward positive change, I must open myself to discomfort by listening to, truly hearing what others have to say. And with that in mind, I'd like to read this. I found this, it's great. This is a truncated version, but it's a passage in which a Reverend Jamie Yandel, another Reverend in our movement, talks about their idea of God. They write, last Friday night, 600 people from my religious faith, UU, watched an online drag show together. And I relate to this because I saw a drag show at Chautauqua. It was one of those moments, they write, when you realize something epic is happening. I felt joy. The drag show was heaven broken open, given to us for the evening. And we were the angels. And the kings, the drag kings and drag queens were our royalty. Everything for a little while was perfect. and I saw the face of my God. Drag, it's the most authentic thing I can be part of. Watching or taking the stage as a drag queen, king, drag queer people are in fact royalty. The early creators, in fact, utilized drag for survival, and that's historically true, and in some cases for protection. When kings and queens are on stage, their witnesses form a holy council. And here is where my God can be found, nestled in the crux of the connection of humanity. My God knows I was created for an expansive life and knows that the margins hold the most sacred and holiest parts of humanity. When I witness a drag show, I'm witnessing my God in all who are present. I can feel our connection. The rhythm of life running through all of us and in all things is so obvious. It almost hurts to feel it. In that moment, all of the struggles and pain incurred from existing as a person who is non-binary are washed away, and I am made new again. That's what Reverend Yandel wrote about God. Now, Joshua, speaking of myself, might have read that and honed in on 3 words. They wrote, I was created. I might have honed in on that, ignoring the rest for fear of being in agreement with creationism, which I'm not. And in so doing, I'd miss that they also wrote, quote, God can be found nestled in the crux of the connection of humanity. We're a humanistic concept. I would have missed that they wrote, I would have passed over their description of our connection, the rhythm of life running through all of us and in all things. I would have overlooked the fact that they repeated the possessive word my in front of God, claiming this is their understanding, and it doesn't have to be mine or anyone else's. I would have rejected powerful and meaningful sentiment to which I, Joshua, personally can relate. I would have rejected it for an unwillingness to sit in my own discomfort and thereby stunting my own personal transformation, keeping my spirit captive. So all this is to say, the question I asked today was, how might spirit be liberated by using our power to create change? Well, my answer to that question is that I personally, this is my answer, you may have your own, I can and I should be open to changing myself first in each moment, all the time. Especially for me, a person who is ensconced in the comforts of privilege and creates intransigent ideas to put my own mind at ease. Personal transformation is necessary so that I can be a part of structural change we can make in our diverse community of communities, as Paula Cole-Jones calls our UU faith communities. If I am to ask others to validate and understand me, my humanism, my complex self, if I'm asked to ask others to validate and understand me in a mutually respectful relationship, I must make every effort to sincerely do the same. And to put my actions where my words are, I intend to practice now the world that I want to build, the world in which no one is coerced to believe something they don't, but everyone respects with deference and works to understand what others believe. Recognizing there is no place worth being that I will feel perfectly comfortable, and that personal growth only comes with discomfort. I personally am living into that discomfort as much as I can. Even claiming my identity as Pastor Joshua is doing so, living into that discomfort, although I'm getting to like it. And that has consequently been a most powerfully rewarding experience. I commit to turning toward the further liberation of my spirit away from what restricts me. As a humanistic, culturally Jewish person, I also often struggle with meaning making vis-a-vis stories in the Bible, especially the Hebrew Bible. So I will be purposefully exploring the story of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the holiest days of the Jewish New Year. I will be exploring them in order to preach about them next month here at Northwest in a number of places. I've decided to use this serenity prayer of Reinhold Niebuhr, this series that I'm interpreting the serenity prayer. I've decided to use it to write my own version inspired by Niebuhr's original. Niebuhr, I really should have looked up if it's Niebuhr or Niebuhr. I read the beginning of it in my service last month, the beginning of my new version of the prayer. So I hope you don't mind if I read the beginning again today, just a little bit, in hopes that you might make the connection to today's talk, what I've talked about. I replaced the word God in the prayer with the sentiment of one of our transcendentalist forebearers of our UU faith as well, and that's Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he wrote, "Within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and parcel is equally related, the eternal one." And I love that description of the divine within us. So my version begins this way. I'm only going to say the beginning. May the spirit of the whole of life, to which every part and parcel and is equally related, every part and particle is equally related, inspire us with the human grace that allows for transformative experiences of wonder and awe, moments of euphoria where we rest between breaths with complete acceptance of life's challenges, the things we cannot change or know, and recognition that we do not start from a clean slate or a level playing field. Allowing us to welcome the elation of each moment and the potential of the next. May the spirit of the whole of life, to which every part and particle is equally related, move us to be vulnerable enough to continually balance the exercise of power and love, to effect the change that will and that should transform the world for the better. Thank you. And now we join together in hymn number 1018, Come and Go With Me. And my script says Diana introduces the hymn, so I can let her do that as well. Thank you all.
We give thanks for the beauty of this day and the company of those assembled here. Thank you for the breezes of change, clearing our heads and bringing fresh ideas. May they cleanse our minds of the oppressions and the isms that divide us. Thank you for the flame of hope, the heat of righteous anger, the warmth of compassion, and the fire of commitment. May they bubble the cauldrons of transformation. Thank you for oceans of love, rivers of connection, tears of relief, and pools of serenity. May healing waters flow over us and through us and among us, wearing down the sharp rocks of despair to bring joy in the morning. Thank you for the good earth beneath us, around us, and within us. May we take this clay and co-create a new realm of justice and beauty. Thank you for all these and more. We accept our gifts and commit to building, sculpting, painting, singing, and dancing them to life, to abundant life. So be it. Blessed be. Amen.
Amen.